He says preaching is worship. He says this, he says the very act of preaching, he says this glorifying of Christ is the essence of his worship, though at the same time his gospel preaching ministers to needful people. It is here that the preacher's feet bring good news of the gospel of peace. And while he is doing this, he acts as God's divinely appointed herald, reflecting the image of Christ as the living word in the message he brings. The preacher ought to be exceedingly gripped with the sense that he is delivering Christ to the people through his preaching. If he is enthralled with the sense of this, then he is immediately conscious of the nearness of God. This nearness, he says, and mode that the preacher travels through is the exact definition that God himself gives those who worship. He says in Leviticus chapter 10, verse 3, I will be sanctified by those that draw near to me. Whether that be the priest of the Old Testament, which we're reading about, or the preacher of the New Testament, worships God as he performs the duties God requires of him. And this would be true for any Christian in the outworking of their gifts. Preaching is worship, he says. It is the vehicle that draws the minister closer to God during that hour. Preaching is a spiritual infection which ought to impregnate the hearer with the life of God in Christ. If the preacher is intimately aware that he is doing this through the unction and temperance of the Spirit of truth, he is immediately aware that God is delighted in the work being dealt with. 1 Corinthians 1:21 says, for after that, in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God. And here's the catcher. It pleased God. It brought pleasure to God by the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe. I like what Eric Little said. He says, when I run, he says, the famous Scottish runner, he says, when I run, I feel the pleasure of God. And when the preacher preaches, he should feel at that very moment that there is a divine exchange happening there, that he knows at that very moment, he's enthralled, he senses the nearness of God. And in his worship of the proclamation of the word, he senses that he's bringing pleasure to God. It's a beautiful thing. You know, it's not just about you going out sharing your faith. It's about you worshiping Jesus Christ. It's about that moment that within the context of your sharing your faith, with handing out a tract, talking to that person at work, wherever you're at, it's in that moment. It's more than just handing them a tract. It's more than just telling them about Christ. It's about your worship with God. At that very moment,